welcome to Planet Poet Words in Space. I'm your host, Sharon Israel, and I want to thank Robert Cuccinota for my new theme music. And today, I'm so glad you're listening, and I'm honored to have poet and visual artist Anique Sara Taylor as my guest by phone to discuss her beautiful and spiritual debut poetry collection, Where Space Bends. Hi, Anique.
Hi. I am so happy to be here with you. It's an honor, and WIOX and the community. Thank you, Sharon.
Oh, thank you. Your beautiful work and your commitment to the community is very extensive. I want to read a little bit for our listeners about you, Anique. Anique Sara Taylor is a Pushcart Prize nominee. Her work has appeared in Rattle, Common Ground Review, Adana, St. Mark's Poetry Project's The World, Stillwater Review, Earth's Daughters, and several anthologies. Anique has co-authored work for HBO, Scholastic, Simon & Schuster, and a 3-act play that was performed by Playwrights Horizons and Williamstown Theater Festival. Where Space Bends, the book that Anique will be discussing today, in earlier chapbook forms, was chosen chapbook finalist by Minerva Rising in 2014-2015, and by Blue Light Press in 2014. Anique Taylor is also an award-winning artist, and her art has been featured in numerous galleries, including the Bruce Museum, the Monmouth Museum, the Noyes Museum, the Puffin Foundation, the Cork Gallery at Avery Fisher Hall, and the Bronfman Center Gallery in New York. She teaches creative writing for Benedictine Hospital's Oncology Support Program at Bart LLI, at Writers in the Mountains, right here in the Catskills, and also teaches privately. Anique holds a poetry MFA from Drew University, a diploma from the Sorbonne, a drawing MFA, and painting BFA from Pratt Institute, and a Master of Divinity degree. I think all of this gives you a tremendous license to write poetry.
Although maybe we don't need license, but definitely.
That's so funny. So, Anique, will you start us off with, it's actually the first poem in the book. It's called Plum Island, and it was recently nominated for a Pushcart Prize.
Yes, by my publisher, Finishing Line Press.
So
very
exciting.
Thankful. So it's called Plum Island. First bought for a coat, a barrel of biscuits, and 100 fish hooks, named Manitoulin by the Pequot Nation for beach plums that grow by its shores. Its 840 acres teem with osprey, kestrel, loon, Canada geese, gulls, ticks, white-footed mice, deer, and 70 government buildings where high-hazard pathogens are handled through steel-windowed boxes with glove inserts for experiments. Lab 257's germ warfare research laboratories. Migrant birds swoop among animals infected with virus vaccines fed in open-air troughs. A bio-level 3 animal disease lab. They study tick warfare as deer swim 2 miles from Lyme to forage for food. Outside the lab, crows pick at dead birds on the ground, fly between island and mainland. Across the Sound, my parents suntan on aluminum beach chairs. Sand burns the bottoms of their feet. Mama hands out salami on white bread from a wicker basket. In low tide, I drizzle wet sand, mud into Gothic drip castles and moats. I rock back on my heels, squint at a seagull flying across the water. I wonder who lives there and what my life will be. As a gull glides above me low, almost stopped in the air.
That's Anique Sara Taylor reading her poem Plum Island from her collection Where Space Bends. And could you tell us why you wrote this poem and how it began for you.
Well, there's a saying that one of the best things that can ever happen to a writer or a poet is if they get a really, really bad disease. The disease comes with histories and cover-ups. So when I realized I had Lyme and it was diagnosed, I started researching, and I found all of this history in Plum Island. This poem was based very, very carefully on research, but a lot has been taken down since then. There is a book that actually backed up all the facts written by a lawyer, and it's called Lab 257. So I took the information. Yes. Go ahead.
No, I'm listening. Oh. So you took the information from what you... This is very interesting, because I don't think many people know about this, unless you do have
and the task for me was to take information and have it work as a poem. And so...
it does, and it's really very evocative, because you bring in the science and the history of the island, and then your past as a child, watching your parents, watching your mother make the sandwiches, and looking at the seagull. And it's such a beautiful first poem, because there's nothing of your present life in it, but it evokes the future. I wonder what my life will become.
Yeah, and so the poem sets up an overriding situation of Lyme disease, which is pretty common up here, but also sets this as something that happened in the past. And the first few poems are set in the past, and then it's separated. We'll talk in a little bit about the illustration that separates.
I see. So the illustration separates. I understand.
Yeah. And I grew up on the very, very, we didn't know, it was the very tip of an exquisitely beautiful estate that was hundreds of acres. And that bordered on estates and public parks that were 1,000 acres. So I grew up in the very deep woods, way before Lyme as it is today was identified. And we would go all summer without shoes and short shorts, and we drove in swamps. And so...
those were the days, right?
Yes.
Innocent days. Anique, I wanted to ask you, when did you begin writing poetry?
Before I could actually write and read, I memorized music that had words, like all of Annie Get Your Guns album by Irving Berlin and my grandmother's old vaudeville 78. And children's book of poetry, so I loved those, and I would write in my head. And I would just write little pieces, and then afterward, we had a teacher when we were 11 years old, Mr. Petty, who taught us a college-level class in a poetry survey in American poetry. And he also had us read Shakespeare and Evangeline. And then, so I was kind of writing all along. And then I was very lucky with these two teachers in that my high school teacher, Miss Kelly, encouraged me, and I was going through a hard time. And I'd write these furious personal essays. And then my mother would type them up, and she'd make them very polite. And then when I started typing them up myself and not cleaning them up, Miss Kelly loved them. And she encouraged me, and it helped me through difficult times. Teachers can be very powerful that way.
And then you were associated with the St. Mark's Project, correct?
Yes. A wonderful, wonderful time. I'm actually finishing a book on that now. The St. Mark's Poetry Project on the Lower East Side. I studied with Alice Notley and Bernadette Mayer. And then after that, recently I went to the Drew MFA program where we were fed such beautiful material, and my devotion really, really grew. So I've been writing all along, but that was when it really deepened.
Thank you. So the genesis of this book was the first collection that you've had, and that was from an accumulation of your writing since Drew, or before and after?
Yes, it was a combination. There was some work that had started, but there was a point a few years afterwards where I decided I was going to write every day. And it took me through an especially cold winter. And so sometimes books just grow from work that you do, and then you see what follows from the next.
Right, and you've developed a very disciplined style, routine where you write.
Yeah, and that's fairly recent, although I've accomplished more since I've done that. I mean, noticeably, I decided things would always close in. There was always something that would interrupt my work. And so I started to get up at 5 in the morning, which seemed really harsh, but I get up, and in that way, every day I was able to get 2 and usually almost always 3 hours of work in before anything could close in, and it's been extremely rewarding. And even on the days that I work badly and sort of around, the work keeps growing.
I think it's great. Well, for all those poets that are listening, that's a really good idea, if you can do it, or some facsimile of that. Before you read another poem, I think The Fragmented Path from the book, would you describe a little bit about your style, Anique, just briefly?
Where I seem to connect with the most satisfaction, or things seem to resonate for me, I seem to favor very long lines, metaphysical metaphors. I'm very, very pulled to rhythm, and I loved packed words. And this isn't a style that's always supported by people, but it comes back to me over and over again.
Did you say packed words?
Packed, yeah.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Sometimes a row of adjectives or of alliteration where the sound of consonants are repeated. And sometimes longer words as opposed to very simple, elegant sentences, which work for others.
Thank you. But that creates a very intense mood.
Yes, often. And I think that's going to come out in some of the poems that I read.
Anique, would you read The Fragmented Path for us, please?
Yes. Let me pull that up. The Fragmented Path. The unraveling of creeper vines, jawbone linked to skull snaps shut. It is too late in the night for anyone to love me. Earth tilts towards the sun, increasing the length of days. The mountains flood with snow melt after warm rains. What if you could split apart everything you once thought belonged? The fragmented path, arrangement of atoms, click into the electric field as if everything mattered. A robin picks at a clump of holly berries. Dusk grows into a star. Can you hear them in the night? Wind shear above waves, the low speed soaring, a rushing sweet enough to blow apart the limb bone of an angel.
Oh, I love that poem. This is The Fragmented Path, written and recited by Anique Sara Taylor from her collection, Where Space Bends. To blow apart the limb bone of an angel, I've never heard anything like that before you wrote that, Anique. That's really amazing. And the way you telescope between the small and the large, the creeper vines going into stars, and how it's so visual, and then you have this poignant saying early on, it is too late in the night for anyone to love me, and the questions you ask. Can you talk a little bit more about the poem, and is it a metaphor for the book?
Thank you for the beautiful things you say. Newly aware of Lyme, I was reading about microscopic creatures that live inside us, and also the universe, which is so huge that we live within. And so there are immense universes outside of us, and then microscopic ones inside. And I started to look not from a human body perspective, but what happens when you let go of that attachment and seeing things just through your human eyes, and how that can shift the point of view of time and matter. So I started juxtaposing these universes.
Oh, that's beautiful. So not to see only through human eyes. Anique, I think we have time in this right now for you to read the poem again, unless you want to say something else more about it before we do that.
Yes, I just closed it off, so give me 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here it is.
Great.
The Fragmented Path. And you can hear a skull snap shut, jaw only, and those are some of the packed words I talk about.
Packed words. Okay, I just couldn't hear with the packed words, right, and then the alliteration.
Yeah, and packing one right next to the other. That. The Fragmented Path. The unraveling of creeper vines, jawbone linked to skull snapped shut. It is too late in the night for anyone to love me. Earth tilts toward the sun, increasing the length of days. The mountains flood with snow melt after warm rains. What if you could split apart everything you once thought belonged, the fragmented path, arrangement of atoms, click into the electric field as if everything mattered. A robin picks at a clump of holly berries. Dusk grows into a star. Can you hear them in the night? Wind shear above waves, the low speed soaring, a rushing sweet enough to blow apart the limb bone of an angel.
And that's the second reading of the Fragmented Path. It blossomed even more during the second reading. And this is Planet Poet Words in Space at WIOX Community Radio. We're live and local from the Catskills, and I'm Sharon Israel, your host. Joining me by phone from the Catskills also is poet Anique Sara Taylor. And just like the previous poem, Anique, I find that your work is very connected to the cosmos and to the very smallest things. And I just wanted to read from one of the comments, fabulous comments on the back of your book. And this is by Elisa Ostreicher. Anique Sara Taylor's fierce, wind-whipped poems pull me, drag me, shake me, and make me see seasons, oceans, stars, buds set to burst, and, this is quoting Anique, the universe of a single cell. She has the gift of reminding us we are alive in all our senses, and then beyond our senses, far beyond, into prayer and into the void. And that's Alicia Ostraker talking about Anique's collection, Where Space Bends.
Thank you. I just want to say, Alicia's so generous to do that. Michael Waters also did, and Araceli Sturmay. These were mentors of mine at Drew, and this was such an amazing, I thank them for their endorsements, but the whole community is just so amazing. Nehalem Oskaluk, Sean Nevin, Anne-Marie Macari, Jill Larkin, and the poets who studied there that are now doing such beautiful work in the world. And this was a total feast of poetry. It's no longer there as such, but we were lucky to have it when we did.
It was almost too perfect that it couldn't last.
I feel that way, actually. It changed my life. And yes.
Well, I hope it can be resurrected in some ways. I know you're still in touch with your mentors and your colleagues from the program.
I know we'll talk about my teaching, but they gave me so much, and that's one reason why I teach, because I want to share some of what I got with the community.
Well, that's really wonderful. And talking about spirituality and the cosmos and the love between mentor and mentee, and you have so much of it when you talk about your experiences with your students and with your teachers. Would you read from The Glory? And I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about that poem before you begin.
I think it needs it. The Glory, Wikipedia says that it's an optical phenomenon that resembles a saint's halo, shadow, around the observer's head caused by the light of the sun interacting with tiny water droplets from mist or clouds. And sometimes if you're in an airplane, there's like a phantom plane across, and that's the same phenomenon. So this is my poem about that. It's called The Glory. Position yourself barefoot in garlic mustard on the mountain top, where bittersweet scarlet berries have held on long after its leaves have fallen. Look to the other side of the sun, where a lens of droplets casts a shadow into the opposite side of the sky. Your ghost will loom giant, a colored mist, a wingless phantom in early morning. You do not have to borrow a happy childhood. You do not have to open your skin. If you pause there, watch from a roof above rough seas where the world is pulled out of the map of itself. Breathe in a sequence long enough for the horizon to spin, as if you could gather up all the years that have been lost, and boulders of impossibility had begun to melt. Bring before your edges fog across the clouds, before rain erases the peaks and you feel a familiar half-life pull of someone calling from far away. Take off your winged helmet. Take off your silver boots. Descend the heights, tracing the long roots of dry land into a heavy cloak of skin. Place the pieces you gave away to be loved gently beside the outline of a half-remembered people. Tame the wild doubt of your tiny heart. You will not fall.
That is The Glory, and that's pretty glorious. And that's a poem read by Anique Sara Taylor. And that's about an optical phenomenon, reading from your Wikipedia epigraph, that resembles an iconic saint's halo. You will not fall, like the angel, I guess, won't fall.
Right, and part of it is it's a metaphor of connecting with spirit and feeling transcendent, but how we carry so much doubt and self-criticism as we enter back into our own human self. And I see this so much in my students and some of my colleagues and students who are doing such beautiful work, but they can't see how wonderful they are. And that's why I end it with, tame the wild doubt of your tiny heart. You will not fall.
And you start barefoot in garlic mustard. Now, do these images just come, did you visualize that or think of that when you started the poem, or can you tell us how that came about?
My process often is collaged. One day I'll write about something on a hike, or I'll research something scientific, and then a poem starts, and I'll have different sources of different lines, and then they sort of start to call to me, and I'll write something, and over time I'll be writing something else, and I'll say, what would happen if I then put it into the middle of the glory poem?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like cooking, where you add something, and then it brings the rest of the flavors alive.
You sort of taste it and then go on.
Yeah, so sometimes they have to simmer, and there's a process, and they take a while.
Oh, thank you, Anique. That's a great explanation. Your book has one illustration that you designed, you did for the book, and you also did the cover. We'll talk about later. And it faces a poem called The Bucket. The bucket is on the left side, and then the illustration is on the right. And go ahead.
I think in the actual book, it's actually a separating sheet.
Oh, okay.
But
I see.
it serves the same purpose. Is from Plum Island to the bucket is the past, and then there's this drawing sheet, and then it comes into the present.
It's a beautiful illustration. Vines. Tangerine? I can't identify it.
Well, that's interesting, because you had mentioned that it's bucolic. And it is a delicately rendered and textured drawing, and it looks like a detail of a field of maybe some sort of flowers, and it is very delicately drawn. But it's actually a field of weeds.
Oh.
So it's very subtle that there's the beauty. There's beauty juxtaposed to things that are usually ignored at best, or unwanted, repetitive, and invasive. So even the drawing was a metaphor.
I love that. Would you read the bucket? Because it's speaking of detail and honing into something very concrete. That's a beautiful example. I just don't want to give too much away, but if you could read the bucket for us.
Yes, the bucket. There is no wind. Door hinges creak open. A terrible calm in the night sky. a frigid crescent at the bottom of a bucket, hundreds of polished bones that had moved within muscle under skin, a baby mouse curls, her mouth frozen open, pink claws outstretched. Maybe this time I will tell you as much as you can bear.
That's the bucket. This time I will tell you as much as you can bear. And maybe that's the entree to the prelude or the segue into the next part of the book.
Yes, very perceptive. Yes.
And I just, all those bones, all those polished bones, it reminds me also of the limb bone of the angel. So it echoes that beautifully. But it's quite a stark and scary little poem.
It is. It's a very hard poem. And it's warning of pain to come, and the calm before the storm. But I didn't want this book to be about painful details of my life, but I also wanted to warn the reader just in case. So it's a metaphor for that. I mean, you've got the dead mouse, her mouth frozen open and claws outstretched, but also it's a gentle warning, to be careful of the reader. I'll tell you only as much as you can bear.
The attention to the scary, horrific, really detail is amazing, and just carry that little mouse in the bucket in my brain right now.
Cancel.
But the beautiful illustration that introduces the rest of the book. I wanted to ask you about the cover art, which is also yours, and it's radio, so we can't see it, but it's filled with beautiful color in strata, and there are mountains. So you're an artist, and you've showed in many galleries and museums, and you decided to concentrate on poetry right now. And what's the connective thread?
It's an interesting question. I'm not even sure if I know. Mm-hmm. I've always been pulled to the creative side of the road, and not very much to the other. I grew up studying classical music, singing and dancing. I worked devotedly as an artist for decades. I've always written, and maybe if I had several lifetimes as myself still, I would pursue all of these. But I do believe that it's possible if one has learned something in one art to transfer it to the other. My artwork is often very detailed and controlled, and when I was beginning at St. Mark's, Alice Notley said, "Anique, you have so much control in your poetry." And I sort of went, wow, that's weird. But things transfer, and, musicians, those with a musical ear bring rhythm and texture and sound into poems. And also, if you've been a visual artist, the visual comes into the work. But I think it's good for us to have as many outlets as we can.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about your philosophy of teaching now. And you also, I think that's very associated with what you call the myth of creativity and waiting for inspiration, which is very important for writers to know.
Yes. One of the concepts is, there are a few. There's this concept that talent is a fixed thing and we get it doled out and it's a limited amount. But I find if someone goes to their art with devotion and persistence and sensitivity, then it grows, and then afterwards people come to you and they say, oh, you're so talented, but it's something that you grew. And also inspiration is another popular concept, and many people, I know Alice Walker does, but many people wait for inspiration, and bless them, it's great. That's my favorite drug. But I find what works for me is zeroing in on where my interest is and aiming for being engrossed in the process and being curious and learning, gathering tools and researching, and then showing up and doing the work. And once you sit down to work, and this is so for so many mediums, that when you show up and work and you become deeply involved, the inspiration comes. And then the flow of ideas opens up and grows. It's like a muscle.
Right. We have so much to cover, and time is fleeting. I can't believe it. But you also wanted to talk about the importance of community and the importance of place. And you have two beautiful poems about that. One from this book, Where Space Bends, and one from your next collection, Cobblestone Mist. So could you briefly talk about the importance of place to you in your poetry, and then read those for us?
Yes. Often we ignore the places we first came from, or places that are so usual that we don't think of them as something that's amazing to write about. And place is just so deep in ourselves. Often there's love of place, but sometimes there's also when there's not love of place. But these are really, really, really precious details.
Right, even if you hate the place where you came from.
Yeah, that can be great material.
That's funny. But you have two, you can read each, whatever you want first, Taco Tuesday or Dan Lynch Blues Bar. What would you prefer to read as far as place is concerned right now?
Let me read Taco Tuesday.
Right.
This is really a love poem to the area, and this is how community can save someone. Taco Tuesday. My Celica grinds over parking lot craters behind Main Street. I carry Nesha. That was my dog. I carry Nesha in her red plaid bag up Sportsman's Ramp. Taco Tuesday. Chicken, beef, bean, fish, $1 a taco, 3 for a margarita. Vicky's been nailing roofs. Chip installing insulation. Julie dashes out in search of a lost owl. Patricia and Amy weave around Diana May's table after chorus. Nesha barks when I hustle her down the ramp. Crickets croak like ducks, clatter and quake in the August evening. Waiters serve tables, sling margaritas and taco stack trays. Nesha scarfs down 2 chicken and 1 fish, leaving me only lettuce tacos, as Joanne and Jerry rush in with Julie and the story. A biologist had spotted a wounded owl. They traced deep forest meridians, praying markers would hold. The broken branched pine tree 6 paces past the second hill, after a boulder in the river bend, an echo, a nod from the great owl god. They found him broken-winged, trembling in the dusk, wrapped him in towels and eased him into the carrier. Afraid of missing the raptor wildlife rehabilitator at Winchell's Corners, they gulp down bean tacos and rush out. The exquisite tumult of voices over a beach of clinking plates. What holds the skin of our lives together here? down the ramp, hiding my own broken wing. On the drive home, Janis Joplin belts out, "Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose." As I'm thrown back to a time when I was helpless in the dark, unable to fly. We pull into the driveway. I look up at three mountains that hold us suspended in their palm, wondering how we get lost and how we are saved, as the Victorian roof peak frame perfectly slices open the night sky.
That's lovely. That's Anique Sara Taylor reading her poem, Taco Tuesday, which talks about a very specific place, which has Taco Tuesday, and then segues into this beautiful expression of life of your life, and biology and owls. That's much more than just Taco Tuesday, but I love the name of the poem.
And how community can save us.
Yes. I would love to know what your upcoming events are happening for you, Anique.
Great. They'll be posted on my website, which is aniquesarataylor.com. To be announced, because you know what's been happening, but Woodstock Poetry Society reading, and then workshop and readings through Pine Hill Library and the Phoenicia Library, and I'll be teaching for Writers in the Mountains,
which is a wonderful organization that Anique has enriched formidably and wonderfully,
and vice versa.
Could you give us, before you read one or two more poems, contact information for people who want more information about the book and where they can find it?
Yes, signed copies. You can find a contact page on my website, Anique. That's Anique, and Sarah without an H, Taylor. Also at Finishing Line Press, the publisher, and also at Amazon. And also in those places you can read the beautiful endorsements that they gave me, Michael Waters, Alicia Ostreicher, and Araceli Skirme. And on my website will be information about upcoming events, how to contact me, and classes and things like that.
Great. So, Anique, could you read us one more poem?
Yes.
Let us know. Tell me which one you want to read. I'll leave it up to you.
How about Manasquan?
Oh, beautiful.
This is about going away and coming back, and
it's a poem for this time.
Yes, thank you. Manasquan. Barefoot over shards of crushed slipper shells and mermaid's tears, he walks back a curved inlet, gleam woven through tide marks, seaweed tangles, thighs shimmer iridescent pale next to purple T-shirt. Drops a horseshoe crab molt on the towel beside me. Book-pleated gills on the underpart, 5 pairs of knuckled legs for chewing what grows from what it leaves behind. In the distance, a train crawls across the bridge to the island. Jet skis burst a ruckus of waves that amplifies incoming tides' repetitive lapping, a hairline reminder where bay meets shore. Bivalves swing tooth-like, ghost crabs a sand dollar, by marsh grass where jagged paths disappear into the unknown. A brick fragment, beaten relentless by storm surge, its rim wave tossed among discarded fruit jars, tail lights, whiskey bottle lips, shipwreck remains. I slip it into my pocket to bring back to daily life. With obsessive fingertip trace around the perimeter to smooth the edge, I try to remember how to wear down the impossible.
That's Manasquan by Anique Sara Taylor. Anique, thank you so much for your stunning words, and they need to be relished many times, I believe, and for being on the show, and best of luck with your book, and thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks, Anique.
Thank you, Sharon.